Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Anurag Singh and today we are with Ingrid Rodman Holmes. She's going to introduce herself and then we will talk a little bit about her book. So Ingrid, will you tell a little bit about yourself?
Yes, Ingrid Rodman Holmes, as you've said, and I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. I now live in Sweden, outside of the Gothenburg area. My mother was Swedish and my father was American, and that meant that we went back and forth between the countries in my childhood. And I went to school here some of the time and most of the time in California. And then in 1980, I met the man that was to become my husband. And from there on, it ends up that I moved here in 1987. We went back and forth between California and Sweden, and now I'm here. I've been here for what is it now, about 34 years, something like that?
Yeah.
And I have two sons, Jonathan, who's 34, and Daniel, who's 31.
Yeah. So you spent the beginning of your life in US and then since after you left US you have been spending your life here in Sweden.
Yes, that's right.
How did you originally become interested in the topic of codependency?
As we'll show later on in this program, codependency really is not something I would say that you become interested in, because any one of us can become codependent. It's something that we do when we feel that somebody in our environment is dysfunctional, is behaving in a way that we don't understand. So one could say that I grew up learning how to be codependent as there were things that happened in my family that made me a certain way, that made me feel like I had to stop listening to my own intuition and my own needs and start looking to their needs. That's kind of the beginning of codependency. And then it went from there.
Before we go forward with the questions, maybe if you could explain a little bit about what codependency is.
In a way, my last answer sort of tells what it is. It is when an individual is in a relationship with somebody. It could be a parent, it could be a partner, it could be a coworker, where the dynamic is so dysfunctional that you start to paying more attention to the other person than to yourself. That is like the most simple way of explaining it. You start paying more attention to what it is they need, or what's their mood. You may not want them to become angry. You may not want them to become sad or do different things. So you start to behave in a fashion that would stop them from doing those things. Or drinking, for example, which is the case for me.
You just explained a little bit about that this happens when there is a dysfunctional environment. So if you could also elaborate a little bit about what dysfunctional relationship or environment is.
Generally speaking, if you have a healthy relationship, you pretty much try to work so that each partner in that relationship gets some of their needs filled. But if you're in a relationship with somebody who only has their needs in the forefront of the relationship, then that's when something can become dysfunctional. This is just one example of things. It could be that that person at every price has to see to it that he or she is going to drink or take drugs or medication in a way that's not good for the relationship or the family. Maybe they spend a lot of time trying to get drugs, alcohol and so on and so forth, and that time does not go to the family. The money does not go to the family household, for example. And that becomes dysfunctional, because if it's a 50-50 and you're sharing a relationship with somebody, then you need to think about those things.
Yeah, so and you believe that is this kind of dysfunctional environment was with your late husband?
I would say that it wasn't that way to begin with. I didn't understand it to be that way in any way, shape, or form. As it is, you meet someone, you fall in love with them. Everything about that person is something that you like. That's generally the beginning of a relationship. What happened down the line, slowly but surely, this is over literally decades, I began to see how important alcohol was to him. And just as I said previously, he spent a lot of time buying alcohol. He spent a lot of time drinking alcohol, hiding alcohol, not feeling well after drinking alcohol. And the time that he spent in those different states could have gone to our family. It could have been together with me or with our sons, or, being more functional at work, for example.
It seems like it's alcohol, the main evil behind this codependency situation that happened.
In this case, it is what is behind the situation of my codependency, yes. I generally don't speak about it as evil. That's a common kind of misconception about alcoholism and addiction, because nobody chooses to become an alcoholic or, somebody who's addicted to drugs. That's generally not what happens. They are responsible for their addiction, but the evilness is involved in the addiction, the actual potency of these drugs. If you take them for a very long time, it doesn't matter if it's alcohol or if it's pot or what have you. Slowly but surely, you're going to get used to using it, and there will be, different consequences for that.
The question is that, what's the reason behind someone getting addicted to certain things like alcohol or drugs? Is it more because they want to escape reality? Is it because it's fun to take them because it feels good? Or they are in certain situations that they feel that their life is not in control and they just want to live this free life when they are on the drugs or alcohol? What do you think was the case for you?
Well, it's a little known fact, or maybe it's a very well known fact, that about almost every adult has at some point in their life tried alcohol. So, alcohol is available in every environment you can imagine all over the world. And generally speaking, that works out just fine. Most of the population can drink alcohol. Even, there have been cases of people using different drugs and not becoming immediately addicted and so on, and not, going into the spiral with their families and so on. In terms of why people actually end up using so much drugs and alcohol, it's a very individual question. I wouldn't say that anybody wants to use them to the point of becoming ill, but some people have reported to me that have become addicts and are now healthy, have now actually taken steps not to take drugs anymore, have said to me that in their cases, they knew almost at the first drink that this was something that was going to relieve pressure and stress for them. So it's a tricky question. There are people that will start off immediately desiring the drugs, and there are other people that it will take literally decades to become addicted. There's no full answer to that question.
But did your ex-husband, ever realize that his drugs problem is going to influence or affect the family or the relationship? I
would say that anybody that has spiraled into addiction knows that it's affecting their family and themselves. But, in addiction, there's something called denial, and that's a very powerful mechanism that will stop you from actually taking that into your consciousness and, moving forward with any kind of change.
Yeah, so you think that he was in a denial situation to accept the fact?
Yes.
So did he not take any step to make it better? Did he try to keep away from this alcohol problem so that the family could have a better environment?
As far as I could see, no, he did not.
Well, this book is largely based on Ingrid's relationship with her ex-husband. So what has been the motivation to write a book? Why you had this relationship that didn't work very well, and then why did you decide to write the book?
Well, we divorced approximately 15 years ago now. Um, and, that brings with it all sorts of misery and sorrow, but we remained friends. Krista was a good person deep inside. Like this addiction is something else. You have to really look at the difference between the actual problem of addiction and the individual themselves. So we remained friends, and he would call me every week, sometimes every day. Our sons lived with him to begin with, half the time and half the time with me. So we kept up our, relationship. We were pretty close in that sense. We would spend Christmas together, birthdays together, and so on and so forth. And he really cared about me, and I cared about him and our sons. So when he died, which he did, of his alcoholism, I wrote his eulogy, and that felt like the right thing to do. I was one of the only people left in his life, aside from certain colleagues and his children. So I wrote the eulogy, finished that, came home, thought about it a little while, and felt like this isn't enough. Like he's just going to die at 67, and that's all there's going to be to his life that was worth so much more than that. And so I decided that this was an important topic to follow up on. And so basically I took the eulogy and developed it into a book.
And it's amazing that you wrote a book, but does it feel good now that you finally put those things down here in the form of a book?
It feels good, but it is, as one of my very good friends, Thomas, says, every time you share something of your sorrows, you have to relive it again and again. That's actually a form of healing. But in between, it's very painful, actually.
Yes, and I think it's an important message that to share things in form of something, it can be a healing. But also you say it could be painful. So what message, if you have any your experience about it, what would you suggest people about? Should they be more open to share their problems and things or situations like this if they have, or should they keep it to themselves? Because sharing seems to be, on one hand, relieving it, the pain that they have. Plus, on the other hand, it's also could be painful to just go through it because it feels like, as you say, you relive it. Mm-hmm. So, what's your suggestion as a professional in this world?
As a therapist and somebody who works with these issues, I would say that first of all, you need to have somebody that you can trust. Whenever you share something that is difficult, you need to share it with somebody that you've known for a while and that you feel that you can trust. If you don't have somebody that you do feel that you can trust, then maybe find a professional person that you could speak to about it initially. And I would definitely recommend trying to talk about different things that have happened to you. If it has to do with somebody dying, or if it has to do with a bad relationship or anything, try and find somebody that could help you out with that. Yes. Somehow.
So sharing is better than keeping it to yourself. That's what's you.
It's better if you have somebody you can trust.
And who could be the person? For example, can it be person in your family that you can share, or a friend, or professionals in the case if you don't find anyone? Is that what you suggest?
Yeah, it could be someone in your family, but it wouldn't have to be. Absolutely not. It could be a long-term friend that you've always felt that you could trust. It could be a teacher if you're in school. There's lots of people that you may have thought along the way that I could tell that person something. And take some time and think about it. And it does mean taking a risk. You may feel that you're taking a risk when you're telling somebody some of your most private feelings.
It's a very important message that if you have these issues in your life and you find the person you trust, you can share it and it could relieve you a little bit. Mm-hmm. So what's the message of the book? What would you say?
The message of the book. I think if I have to just say one thing about it, it would be to separate the individual from the addiction, because those are not one and the same thing. As I said earlier, it's very common that the addicted person, the alcoholic, is seen as an all-around terrible person because they've done some terrible things. Generally, that's not the case. If that person was not taking drugs and was not always looking forward to having a drink or a fix or what have you, then they're just a regular human being, usually a very good human being. And this is part of the reason why there needs to be good rehabilitation as well. Because once you've done all of those things that are not good for yourself and not good for your partner and not good for your family, you need to have help to know what to do about all of the things that happened during that time.
Yes, so addicted person is different and the person is different in that way.
The addiction is different from the person.
Yeah, so we can't judge a person how he behaves when he's addicted, or maybe his, how he, as a person when he's addicted, the things he destroys or the kind of relationship he makes and the effects that happens after that. You can't judge a person because of that.
Well, they have to be responsible for what they do. If they rob a bank or they hurt someone, they have to be responsible for what they do. But that's not to say that if that person was not taking drugs or alcohol and in the midst of that, that they would do that, beyond that as a human being.
Yes. That's a great talk. We want to know that if someone wants to buy your book, where should they look? Is it available online or is it available on stores?
For now, it's available only in Swedish. Hopefully it will be translated in the future. And the book is available on Adlibris, Akademibokhandel. There's another Lava Förlag, Vulkan Media. So if you look it up online, you will find it, at least in the Swedish media, and it's called Ouppklarade affärer, en alkoholists minnestal. If I translate that, it means unfinished business, eulogy of an alcoholic.
Great. So for now, this book is only available in Swedish. But in the future, it might be translated into English, and it's a very common problem to have someone who is addicted to certain thing in the family, and then how the family suffers. So if you want to know more about her story, you can read the book. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.